Today is February 2nd, 2021. Happy Tuesday to everybody. We are excited to be with you this evening. Joining are some amazing organizers with Indivisible Text Lege and just amazing Texans in general that do amazing work in our state. Very excited to be joined by Kathy Williams, co-leader of the Democracy Huddle, Selena Montoya, former 2020 candidate for the state legislature, also joining and helping us out with our healthcare huddle. Janet Dudding, also a 2020 candidate for the state legislature, helping out our healthcare huddle. And along with Janet is Eleanor Porras, also a member of the healthcare huddle. Welcome, everybody. Happy Tuesday. How are y'all doing?
Happy Tuesday.
Happy Tuesday. We're doing good.
Happy Groundhog Day. Now, last year, Groundhog Day started and it never ended. So I'm hoping for a better trend this year.
Well, yes, happy birthday to my little groundhog. My daughter's birthday's today. So
that's a much better reason to celebrate. Groundhog Day is something that I think I forget a lot of times, but when I'm reminded, like, oh, that's right.
That's right.
And I immediately think of Bill Murray versus anything else, right? So, well, we're joining everybody this evening to reflect and to talk a little bit about Governor Abbott's State of the State address that was done last night. And it was definitely unique seeing it this year because due to the pandemic, the location was changed. Usually it's within the Capitol that this address is shared. And I believe it was outdoors that they had a make a setup for. And so we still see how the pandemic is definitely impacting Texas and just impacting our legislature as a whole and our state leaders. But we're going to kind of go around the table and give everyone a chance to share several thoughts. But first, we're going to kick off with what are just your initial thoughts on Governor Abbott's State of the State? And I want to hand off the mic to Selena if you'd like to share your initial thoughts.
Sure. Well, thanks for having me with you guys today. He had 30 minutes to talk to, folks here in Texas about things that are most important, those everyday issues that are affecting all of us. And, instead, he spent the first third asking for thoughts and prayers, essentially, and spent the second third talking about things they did in the previous session. And then the last third going over, his top 5 issues that, deserve some emergency attention, none of which included really some of the crises that everyday Texans are dealing with right now. So, my concern with the state of the state is that it wasn't addressing the state that we are actually in. There seemed to be some cognitive dissonance going on, and the idea of a return to normalcy at this point, while it's something we all, I think, desire, there's some real pragmatic issues that need to be addressed first. And I, for one, was disappointed that those issues were not directly addressed.
Thank you so much, Selena. Next up, Kathy Williams. Kathy, what are your initial thoughts hearing or seeing Governor Abbott say the state address?
Really very similar. I was pretty much astounded that even though we're in a declared state of emergency, that the governor did not see fit to include any emergency items that would address the emergency we're in. There was nothing on healthcare and vaccinations and that kind of thing. There was nothing on economic recovery and help for families who have been waiting now for months for any help from the federal government. There was nothing for helping create jobs for those who have lost jobs. There was nothing said about housing for those with housing insecurity, and nothing said about healthcare or food insecurity for those who are suffering from that. I mean, it just blows my mind that he cannot cope with this. And particularly it's sad that because the infrastructure is there to cope with disasters. And this is a disaster that is different in some ways, but it also has so much in common with widespread flooding or a hurricane, and all those systems are set up. I don't understand it.
Thanks, Kathy. Janet, I want to hand off the mic to you. What are some of the initial thoughts you had on Governor Abbott's State of the State?
I'd like to echo what Selena said, using the first third as thoughts and prayers. When we are in the middle of a health crisis and an economic crisis and a racial crisis, and we're in the middle of a crisis, and he did not address how to fix this crisis. What can he do? He can declare an emergency. He's got funds at his disposal, but really the only funds that he talked about was sending more funds down to defend the border, which is not under attack. I was disappointed. I was disappointed that he is continuing to aiming towards taking away local control. Nobody's talking about defunding the police except Abbott. Nobody's talking about that. Yet he wants to take the power to take away budget control from local governments. It just doesn't make sense to me. We're in the middle of crisis right now. We need vaccines. He's in a position to take the realm, to lead, and I would like to see him do it. I would like to see him lead.
Thanks, Janet. Eleanor, handing the mic off to you. Initial thoughts.
I will have to agree with everybody else so far that what he didn't say was so much louder than what he did say. You know, the only positive, if you're gonna, think it, is expanding the internet was one thing, but then he's gonna take the power away from the cities and from the people. And so the part about protecting businesses from lawsuits, he is not working for the people. He's just not. So that would be the extra of what the other one said.
Thanks, Eleanor. Well, I think some of it was highlighted in y'all's initial thoughts, and I just, echoing everything that y'all said, it just feels like it really is missing the mark. There's so much. Our state is huge. Our economy is huge, and the impact that COVID has had on our state and the people in it has been huge. And it just feels like the priorities and the emphasis, some of it can help, but it definitely wasn't where we need that attention and the amount of attention that we need. And so in thinking about that, some of it, like I said, some of it was addressed in y'all's initial reflections, but if you really wanted to pinpoint on a few things, what do you think was missing from the state of the state, and why it's important that those things were missing? If you wanted to expand on anything you initially shared. Selena, let's go back to you.
Yeah, I feel like we're, coming full circle once again. A lot of what so many of us heard, even on the campaign trail leading up to 2020, things like expanding Medicaid, providing healthcare access to individuals who don't have it. We have so many more folks who find themselves no longer employed and therefore no longer receiving employer-sponsored benefits. These are the kinds of things that we need to make sure that folks are protected by before they get COVID. And then that leads us, of course, to COVID and decentralizing the process to getting vaccines actually into those people who need it most. We didn't hear anything about educators. We didn't hear anything about frontline workers, those in the healthcare industry who still haven't received vaccinations, who are working in at-risk environments every single day. Sure, you can thank them. You can recognize them. You can ask Texans to look at them. But it's his job and the job of our elected officials to actually provide resources for them. So I think that's the thing that missed the mark. The biggest mark that was hit was not actually having any inkling of a plan to address those critical needs.
Yeah, Janet, I saw your hand raised there a second. It looks like you want to share some thoughts on that, so go for it.
It's exactly what Selena said. He has the power under the emergency declarations that we're under right now for COVID to expand Medicaid. There are now studies available that show by expanding Medicaid to the 90% level, we save budget dollars. We're in a budget crisis. We're in a health crisis. We need health care. We need a plan. We need to get the vaccines out. And I heard nothing, like Selena said, I heard nothing on that. And I'm disappointed. We need a plan. We need to get healthy. We need to stay healthy. He's in charge. Show us.
Thanks, Janet.
Yeah.
Eleanor, since this has been kind of the healthcare focus and you're part of the healthcare huddle, definitely want to get your thoughts on this, but also if there's anything else, what you think was missing from the state of the state.
Really, the healthcare expansion, just there was so much that was missing for the people, and no plan of attack. When you think of West Virginia, they went after a plan. Like they set it up, and I can't remember what the number is, but it's a very high number that West Virginia has the vaccine already. Like they're being praised for their rollout because they made a commitment and had a great plan, and Abbott is doing absolutely nothing. So, he said that, we're starting to get better. I forget the exact words he used, but, that we're starting to get better, but we're really not. I'm in Houston and we're still just under 20%. And schools shouldn't even be open if they're above 5%. And our teachers are not even in line to get vaccines yet. So this is going to be a very long time before we get back to normal.
Thanks, Eleanor. Kathy, what are your thoughts on what's missing?
Speaking on behalf of the democracy, voting rights, elections, and redistricting huddle, I'd say that I was really disappointed that even though the governor included an emergency item on elections, it was all focused at the non-existent lack of security in our elections. It had nothing to do with enfranchising more people, making it, bringing it into the 20th century at least, if not the 21st century, that to have online registration. There are some bills that have been introduced that take us partway there to codify the trial that we won last summer to let people, when they change their driver's license address, to re-register to vote. But that's only based on a court decision and isn't in code. He didn't even talk about that we've done in response to the lawsuit that had been filed. So that to me is a really depressing but expected lack in his speech.
Thanks, Kathy. And our next question, we want to kind of talk about, what do you think this means for advocating during the 87th legislative session? And just to follow up on what y'all said is missing, it's just the lack of vision that we need from a leader who's leading the state the size of Texas. And being concise, having a few bullet points, maybe that is something that people are attracted to and helps things help people digest the information. But ultimately, we've got to get to where we're addressing the huge inequities and huge issues that we see in Texas. And I think just those priorities, we're not seeing it from him. And I love, Kathy, how you shared just in addressing elections and addressing voters. It's not about making solutions that are where it's easier for everybody and putting, things like online voter registration or, same day voter registration or things like that. Like, look, we just went through a very tough election. It was unsafe for a lot of people in different ways. Let's just make this easier. That wasn't the message from him at all. And I want to go back to you, Kathy, because thinking about advocating during the 87th legislative session, and being a part of the democracy huddle, not only leadership, but that huddle in general, that's such an important piece that we need. What do you think this means in terms of advocating during this legislative session we're in now?
Well, I'm not only on the legislative committee here, but I'm also on the State Democratic Executive Committee's legislative democracy task force and the Travis County Democratic Party's legislative task force. And the consensus seems to be that this is almost going to be a lost session in terms of democracy in Texas. There are some items that the most likely bills that we're going to have to work with are going to be bills that the authors just don't want a big show from Democrats, because that likely will put it on radar that it wouldn't be on otherwise. Also, that rather than having the pandemic and having to go to virtual input in almost every quarter, unlike the Democratic Party when they had the Texas convention, it actually grew the Democratic, with a little d, opportunities there, because more people could attend, more people could see committee meetings and that kind of thing. And I believe the rules that are being developed in both the House and the Senate are such that it's going to be very difficult for people to testify. The way they're defining being on campus, which is kind of a technical thing that you have to be within the Wi-Fi of the Capitol. And there could be all kinds of things that they could change in their rules. So far, they aren't doing that. So unless you're invited by the head of a committee or the sponsor of a bill to testify in person, virtually in person, you're really not going to have many opportunities to do that, except for like the redistricting hearings that we're having now. Those are very important for people to participate in, and to also pressure their representatives to make sure that we have another round of hearings once they actually have census numbers and maps for people to comment on. It's kind of crazy that we have comments coming before anybody has any information. So, not very helpful.
Thanks, Kathy. Eleanor, what are some of the things that you feel like advocating during the 87th legislative session, what this means for advocating this year?
What I want to advocate for, or just how difficult?
Based on what the priorities that Governor Abbott put in place and just the tone of his State of the State address, what do you feel like that message he's giving will impact us during the advocating during the 87th legislative session?
Well, he's definitely making it more difficult. And so we are going to have to stay alert and stay involved and spread the word, get more people alert and involved to make phone calls. But it's definitely, he's making it harder.
Mm-hmm. Thanks, Eleanor. Janet, what are your thoughts?
Abbott is talking about things that are not a thing. He talked about Biden's federal land executive order. That's not a thing. We have zero or almost zero federal lands. We're not affected. He talked about defunding the police, which is not a thing. So I feel like we need to focus on getting but he's up for election. We need to focus on getting grassroots support to call in to get the message across, because Abbott is up for election. The only direction we have right now is what we've seen from him. We need to get that grassroots support that this is important to us. Our health is important to us. The economy is important to us. The climate is important to us. This is what's important to us. So getting that grassroots support out, I think, is critical right now. Worrying about things that are a thing.
Thanks, Janet.
Exactly.
Selena, what do you think this means for advocating during the 87th legislative session?
Well, speaking on behalf of the reproductive rights huddle, I have to say that when Abbott declared that there had been just 20 million abortions, without really putting it into context, in the past 50 years since, abortions were made legal in this country, in the state of Texas, in the entire country, in the world. So I think one of the things that we've already seen numerous bills filed under is the restriction of abortion access, reproductive care, and of course tomorrow, over 8,000 individuals who are Medicaid recipients who use Planned Parenthood centers for their regular health care, whether they're cancer screenings, contraceptives, they will be kicked off tomorrow with no recourse for their health care, for their needs, and for the things that continue to be, a high need for a lot of Texans, particularly, of course, low-income families and individuals who come from families that don't have another option when it comes to healthcare. So when it comes to advocacy, we are going to have an uphill battle, I believe. We've already seen, bills filed, of course, that are, putting local control once again on the hot seat and diminishing the rights of cities and municipalities to make determinations for themselves, whether that's in their budget or in other, locally controlled issues. He also neglected to cite that in all of the conversations that he's including when it comes to defunding the police, there is very little that has been said about the George Floyd Act, which will also help hold police officers accountable for those who go as far as to brutalize individuals in their control. It would ban chokeholds. It would. There are bills that have been filed that say that other peace officers are obligated to step in when excessive force is being used. There's no mention of that. So, not only are these, like Janet has said, issues that don't exist that he's pandering to, there are issues that we know are affecting people right now that are putting people in life and death situations that are not being addressed, even though legislation has been filed to address them.
Thanks, Selena. And yeah, definitely, without addressing the big issue we have and all in front of us, which is the pandemic, it's just going to continue to make this more difficult for us to be able to advocate. Him not leading and maybe even challenging the legislatures to say, look, make virtual testimony available, make the people's house accessible to the people of Texas. It's disappointing that we're not getting that kind of leadership from our governor. And I want to share a little bit of what some of the news that was shared around this. It's definitely not everything, but just some of the headlines that were shared so people can see. From the Houston Chronicle, they had an editorial saying that Abbott's state of the state, little but red meat and politics. And I think that's what we've heard from everybody here, that there was an actual real big vision on solutions. And I think, Janet, you may have mentioned, or Kathy, was it you that mentioned, getting us to the 20th century and then hopefully the 21st century. That's something that people need to realize. This is 2021. We're 21 years into the 21st century, and we are still not bringing solutions that are going to help us move forward in the future. And Texas is the state that could be leading in this space, that we could be making a difference. And we just don't have a governor right now that has that kind of vision or is committed to putting forth that kind of vision. And so, they also recognize that Abbott talked about healthcare as a pressing concern. And I love this line: an understatement when Texas consistently has the highest number of uninsured in the country. And that just goes back to us not having solutions. So if you have a chance to check this out, definitely check out the Houston Chronicle's editorial on this. And then the Lone Star Project shared a link to Governor Abbott's COVID-19 record, and really shows a timeline of what Governor Abbott has done during the pandemic, and how his lack of leadership and lack of vision has really impacted our state in such a negative way. And so we've seen a lot of the themes that y'all shared around taking away local control. He wants to be the decider in Texas for every community, for every county, for every city, and really uses that power in a way that negatively impacts individual Texans' lives. And it's really, really disappointing to see. So we're going to put a link into our post with this as well, so that y'all can check this out and see. And then both of the major political parties had a response to the State of the State address. Julian Castro had a tweet around this, and the Texas Democrats had a collection of people that spoke in response, and there's a video that people can check out in response to Governor Abbott's State of the State. And one thing that you'll see is just the diversity of the people and the organizations that are represented, which I think was great to see. And we really want leaders to be able to push forward with solutions that are needed within our state. The Texas Democrats also had, like I mentioned, that video, so we'll put a link to that. And then the Texas GOP, when you look at their Twitter feed, they have not a whole lot that they, in terms of a statement of their own, but just really retweeting some of the talking points that Governor Abbott had, and emphasizing some of the things that they want to make sure that are emphasized. And I find this interesting. The most precious freedom of all is life itself. And we keep going back to his lack of response in the pandemic, of how many lives have been lost. I believe it's over 35,000 Texans whose lives have been lost during the pandemic. And when you compare that to population in cities, it's essentially the equivalent of a city the size of Texarkana. I think Texarkana has a little over 36,000 people in their city, and it's like wiping that off the map. And so we really need leadership that's going to help protect the lives and health of Texans. So as we wrap up this conversation, just want to give a huge shout out and thanks to this amazing panel of Indivisible Text Lege organizers, and just awesome Texans in general that joined us. Want to give y'all a chance to share any final thoughts, encouragement for Texans as we continue to work for that better and brighter future. And what are some of the key things you encourage people to take part in? We'll start off with Eleanor, if you don't mind kicking us off.
Things that I'm encouraging is more volunteer, phone banking, looking at your neighborhood, finding Democratic votes, like-minded people, and going on different Zoom meetings and educating yourself. You can do it in your pajamas. I've been to, 5 meetings this week and learned multiple different things that affect me personally and that I didn't know. So there's a lot of education to be had, and it's, just free on your computer.
Kathy.
I'd say voting is not the end of our responsibilities as citizens of the United States, that we have to hold our elected officials, Democrats and Republicans, accountable for their actions and what they do and don't do and how vigorously they do it. So I would say call and write and join us at Indivisible Texas Lege to take actions and be part of our call to action network. And I do have a ray of hope, I think, in that the announcement this week that Dr. Pritesh Gandhi, who was the director of the People's Clinic in Austin for years, and was a candidate this last year for Congressional District 10, an unsuccessful candidate, but he has now been appointed as the head medical officer in chief of the Homeland Security Department of the United States. And he is an expert in systems and knows what he's doing. And so I see some hope there that there will at least be medically correct, scientifically based decisions coming from that department, which of course is over FEMA and all of its supply chains and that kind of thing.
Thanks, Kathy. Janet.
Right now, we're in a unique position. The Texas Senate is currently holding redistricting hearings. We're in a unique position to go and make an in-person virtual presentation to the senators, limited to 2 minutes. You're not limited to geography. So in other words, if you've already missed Central Texas, you can go for the Rio Grande. In other words, go and just sign up. You do need to sign up 24 hours in advance. We need to get the word out. When you go, ask for what you want. We don't have census data. We don't have maps. What we do have is we have the opportunity to ask them to have more hearings once we have census data and maps. So make sure that you're asking for that so that they can have more hearings, have more public input once we can see what the maps, what the census data looks like and what the maps look like. Right now is a perfect opportunity to write letters to the editor, to encourage your friends and neighbors and those that you might not see every day, but who read the newspaper, to go ahead and make that testimony. It doesn't have to be virtual testimony. You have to give virtual testimony notice 24 hours in advance, but you can give written testimony. I don't think that there is a deadline. When you give the written testimony, make sure that you email it to all of the members of the Senate Redistricting Committee and ask them to enter it into the record. So that's what we can do right now. Long term, keep it up. Keep it up. Y'all, I have started watching the news again with my shoulders down. We're heading in the right direction. We just need to make sure that our elected officials realize who they're representing and our concerns. So we have the opportunity right now to reach out, form organizations to reach out grassroots wise.
Thanks, Janet. Selena.
Well, I just want to say thank you again for giving us the time to be on here and to share our responses to the State of the State address. And I'm sure there will be more coming, as we delve into some of those issues that maybe didn't come as top of line topics for the governor. One thing that I would be remiss if I did not mention was, his desire to make the state of Texas a Second Amendment sanctuary state, and to do so in a time where right now is National Gun Violence Survivors Week. Something that to me, shows a lack of compassion for fellow Texans who have been victimized by gun violence. And I think we need to remember that if something doesn't feel right, it probably isn't right. And so when you see that, I think it's important to say something. Same thing as what Janet was saying when it comes to redistricting. If it doesn't feel right, we're doing this without maps, we're doing this without information, it probably isn't right. And so we have to say something. So I'm proud to be testifying tomorrow. I hope other folks will join me. It's very easy to do. If anyone needs help coming up with what to say or wants to practice, reach out to me. I'd be happy to do it with you. But I think it's important to have your voice be heard. And if you haven't already, go to Indivisible Texas Lege, join the huddles, join the groups, be a volunteer. This is an incredible group of folks who are volunteering their time to be a part of this because it's that important. So thanks for taking the time and allowing me to be a part of it.
Thanks, Selena. And yeah, we'll put some extra links for everybody. If you check out our Facebook page, or if you follow us on any other platforms, we have some calls to action for virtual testimony for redistricting, and have collected some great resources from partners like League of Women Voters in Texas, also All on the Line Texas, Fair Maps Texas, and TAG, Texans Against Gerrymandering, are amazing organizations that are helping all of us understand what we can do and the impact we can make to hopefully produce much better maps for Texans in our state, so that we get to have elected officials that truly represent our values. The final thing I want to share with everybody is an event that we're doing tomorrow. We are partnering with Voto Latino, Move On, and now 90 plus organizations that have signed the statement calling for accountability that we launched on January 8th after the January 6th horrific Capitol insurrection. And so we're going to do a live stream of Texans dropping off the statement and signatures from the petitions, combined with our petition and Voto Latino, which is on MoveOn's platform. We have over 25,000 signatures of people calling for accountability. And so if you want to tune in and check out this event, there's also going to be some volunteers in DC dropping off the statement and signatures. Join us. This will be something to continue to help with calling for accountability so that elected officials in Texas know that if their only interest is their self-interest and their only interest is enriching themselves, that there are going to be Texans that are going to be calling them out and calling for accountability. And while we're calling for resignations, that's definitely not the only form of accountability. We support Representative Chris Turner's call for the legislature to investigate Attorney General Ken Paxton, and that can include impeachment based on the actions that he's taken on January 6th, as well as just his actions he's taken as Attorney General with frivolous lawsuits. He's indicted Attorney General Ken Paxton. He's under FBI investigation. And so it's time for us to get leaders in Texas that are not constantly under the magnifying glass of the law based on the actions that they're taking. And so as well as the congressional members, the members of Congress that represent Texas, there are 16 members of Congress that voted to object to the 2020 results. So we're excited to continue working with partners to continue to elevate the voice of Texans that are wanting accountability and wanting real leadership that is going to help us solve the problems that we have in Texas and that we very much need to solve. And so join us tomorrow. Thank you once again to this amazing panel, Selena, Janet, Kathy, and Eleanor. Y'all are amazing leaders in Texas. Thank you for everything you do to make a better and brighter future in Texas. And join us next time on our Indivisible Text Ledge Live. We'll continue to post content as we go through the 87th legislative session. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.